Hello, everyone. How are you? Today we are going to be talking about the LGBTQ culture. Let's get this set up here. I want to make sure this is actually the first slide, and it is. So we are going to be kind of going back and forth from the slide to show some key points. I will zoom in and let you see the key points that I have on each slide. If you can read it, if you can see it, if not, I'm sorry, but I will be going over everything that is actually on the slides also. So we should be fine. Our first slide is basically talking about the LGBT culture, the beginning, and the beginning is the L. And the L, as we all know, or some of us may not know, stands for the word lesbian. Lesbian was the first word to breed into existence that people began to use and was well known before any of the terms became into. Not, I'm not saying that it was existed before all the rest of the terms, but it was one of the first ones that um, was actually used by amongst the communities and different people, and it was associated with Sappho. And Sappho was a lesbian woman, or I'm not sure if she was lesbian, so I'm not going to say that. An ancient Greek woman from the islands of Lesbos who wrote poems about the same-sex gender passion. So yeah, lesbian was the first of the culture, the LGBTQ culture. And in the late 1960s, activists retained a decade of old slur of gay. Throughout the 20th century, same gender attraction and sexual activity largely outlawed, and this and other slurs that degenerated LGBTQ people were common. Though its origins are murky, gay was eventually embraced by men who identified themselves with open express of the same gender love. So gay is was mostly a man term. Um, I think they felt more comfortable with using gay to identify themselves. It was a term probably because people had lesbian, and that was more for women. So gay probably took to the term, men probably took to the term gay, and they began to use that more openly and to express themselves and explain their sexuality situations. In the 1990s, the long-standing bonds between lesbians. We're going to go to the next slide. Oh, we actually skipped one. And this was basically just talking about the term gay. It became in the it became in the late 1960s, and throughout the 20th century, same-gender attraction became outlawed, and gay was embraced by men. So that's basically what this slide is presenting. And now we're going to go over to the next slide, which is going to talk about the bond of all our terms that is used in the LGBTQ. Um, so that was created in the 1990s. The long-standing bonds between lesbian, gay, and bisexual people in both daily life and liberation activism led to the widespread adoption of the LCB acronym, which is lesbian, gay, and bisexual. Though trans people have existed throughout history, the term only came into being in the 1960s. So a lot of the times, like stuff, words and terms will be going on, and it just wouldn't be known by a lot of people. So, like I said, even though the lesbian term is the first in the LGBTQ, does not mean that it was the other terms wasn't into existence when the lesbian term was also being used. It was just more commonly used and commonly identified. Um, so yeah, as it replaced other terminology throughout mocked or minimized trans people, transgender was increasingly embraced as part of the wider LGBT rights movement and was widespread by the 2000s. So that's when transgender came about, where people was more out, with the term in the 2000s, early 2000s. Excuse me. We're gonna move on to the next slide, and it's gonna basically talk about the culture of the LGBT community. More recently, the Q has been adapted to the acronym. In the actual sense, at least since the 1910s, it was also once a it was also once a slur used to separate people from a heteronormative society, but queer was increasingly used by people within the gay rights movements beginning in the 1990s. The Q also used to stand for questioning as a way to acknowledge those who were exploring their gender or sexuality identity. So before the Q stood for queer, it actually stood for questioning. Um, so yeah, we don't think we kind of use that anymore. I think everybody just steering to using the Q word as for queer. Now that we have touched into the birth of the LGBT community term, let's dig into the culture. The LGBTQ community has been advocating for equal rights since the 1960s, and in June of 2015, all states permitted same-sex marriage. Although culturally, acceptance of gay marriage varies widely from region to region and person to person, LGBTQ issues have emerged as a major social and political issue nationally. nationally. However, many rights and benefits offered to LGBTQ individuals, as well as openness towards sexual diversity, still vary in the United States depending on geographic location, local culture, and individual backgrounds. So basically, it depends on where you live, how you're viewed, and how you're accepted when you are part of the LGBTQ community and culture. Um, question. Okay, so then we're going on to that's basically what our slide is talking about. That the LGBTQ has been advocating since the 1960s, and in June 2015, all states permitted gay marriage, even though acceptance varies by region. Actually, 1 in 10 of individuals are part of the LGBTQ community, and 8.8 million are gay, lesbian, bisexual individuals that live in the United States. So we have a large community, and that's why I'm kind of not understanding how we are still facing some of these problems and these situations that we have with the LGBT culture, because it's like, it's not years ago when everything was unknown. We've been dealing with these situations for years. So a lot of this stuff, I feel like they shouldn't be dealing with still. But I guess, that goes for any people that's fighting for rights or fighting for a change or fighting for things that people see different. It takes years, it takes a while. And, to hear that they are still fighting for different rights that everyone else has, it's kind of heartbreaking, and it's kind of because it's like this is their lifestyle, this is their culture, and I feel like they should be accepted. But you know, who am I? Gay, lesbian, bisexual individuals living in the United States. LGBTQ individuals still face numerous challenges and instances of heterosexualism and homophobia in their lives today. Some international students may find U.S. culture and laws to be much more open and accepting of sexual diversity than their home culture. So, in the United States, even though people that live in the United States feel that they aren't accepted in some areas, other cultures um, are really not accepted by families or friends or getting different jobs. They're frowned upon. So a lot of them come to the United States to go to school and just kind of be themselves, like to be accepted and to be around people of their kind, because you probably have so many that don't come out because they're afraid of what people think. And I think a lot of people come to the United States because it's the most accepting region that they can come to and kind of live a normal life. Different cultures use different terms to describe and talk about the LGBT community. Sometimes you wonder what to say, what word to use, what's right. And a lot of the times you just need to ask them, like, what do they prefer, what do they go by, um, what do they like to be called to verify, to identify themselves. And if not, acceptable and safe term to use will be the LGBTQ um, term, because it's generally safe and it's accepted by them. So it's not offensive and it's not something that you know we've made up to identify them. It's something that they accept and that they identify themselves with. So if not and you're unsure, just use the LGBTQ and not to offend nobody and make everybody feel safe and comfortable as possible. In many Western cultures, same-sex love and sexual activities are not seen simply as behaviors. They are often part of the way people identify themselves. So a lot of the times, I think we look at the LGBT community as just it's a lifestyle, but it's really their identity. And I think we need to accept that, and I think we need to move forward from trying to change that in this world and just make it a better place for us all to live and be happy and be safe, regardless of who we want to be with or choose to be with. I've included a reference list of my references that I use. I didn't really reference anybody as I went along with the slides or with my presentation, but I did include a reference list at the end of the slideshow of all the information and resources that I use. I want to thank you guys for your time. It was a pleasure. Have a good one, guys.